Do you ever feel like your team gets bogged down in distractions or derailed by constant ad hoc meetings? Or maybe you've noticed that important issues slip through the cracks because there's no clear system to track them. Well, in today's episode, we're going to dig deeper into how managers can set up their teams to operate smoothly and efficiently without constant interruptions or firefighting. We're going to cover meeting rhythms and tracking issues and creating a single place for process documentation, but also how to train your team to stay focused and avoid unnecessary derailments. Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual. Now, in episode 137, I talked about how to get the best out of your managers, focusing on mindset, structure, and encouraging them to be leaders. In this episode, we're going to go a step further, diving into how managers can set up their teams for success with the right processes and frameworks. So let's get started. First, meeting structure and meeting rhythm. I've talked a bit about setting up a regular meeting rhythm in previous episode, and particularly if you're finding that your team is constantly jumping from one issue to another and problems only get solved because they become urgent and you're constantly sort of jumping onto ad hoc meetings, that's a clear sign that you need more structure, and having predictable scheduled meetings, whether that's the weekly one-to-one or team-wide check-ins, creates alignment and prevent surprises. Now, weekly one-to-ones, in my view, should be non-negotiable because that's where team members can flag issues early and where you can offer direct one-to-one coaching and support before problems escalate. Now, the agenda for those meetings can be really simple. I talked about it in episode 137, but very, very quickly, essentially reviewing what's gone on in the last week and what needs to any issues, checking against progress against key goals and what's needed to keep moving forward, and finally prioritizing tasks for the upcoming week. Now, we don't stop on weekly one-to-ones. We also do quarterly performance reviews and so on, but you want that structure, that meeting rhythm in your team through perhaps fortnightly or weekly team meetings or monthly team meetings, through weekly one-to-ones, through performance reviews, etc., that make sure that your team are on track and that your team members are developing and so on, and that you're not having to have a load of ad hoc meetings. Now, one of the things that I've found really, really powerful is the concept of essentially issue tracking, which addresses one of the biggest mistakes that I see is where managers don't have a system for tracking issues in their team. So problems that are brought up in meetings or casual conversations don't get proper follow-up. They get forgotten until they become urgent. And the only way that issues get solved is when they are urgent and they're suddenly raised by a ad hoc meeting or can I just bother you a minute, or sending an email or a Slack message or Teams message or whatever. Now, to avoid that, you need a consistent way to track issues, whether that's a simple shared document or something more sophisticated and a tool that's designed for it. But the key is to make sure that the whole team knows where to log problems, ideas, opportunities, risks, just issues for discussion, and that they can put that in a place, and that's where they can check on the progress of those, and that they can use that in team meetings to prioritize what's the most important things for us to discuss and remove. And keeping on, it doesn't matter if you've got a massive list of issues, as long as in each team meeting you're tackling your most high priority ones, the high impact ones, and keeping that team moving forward. Taking a proactive approach to this means that you get fewer ad hoc escalations, a lot less firefighting, and your team will feel more satisfied because they feel like, firstly, there's a place for them to capture any concerns and issues, but also that they feel confident that things are getting addressed, which is often one of the biggest frustrations for team members, is if they are making suggestions, but nothing ever seems to improve. Moving on then to the process documentation, one of the most important things you need to make sure as a manager of a team is that you have a single place for where people can find out how to do things. Now, perhaps you've had this experience. Perhaps you've had the experience of having a team member ask you the same question about how to do something multiple times. Or worse, perhaps there's a mistake that keeps on happening because your team members aren't clear on the process. Well, having a single place for all of your process documentation can prevent so many of those issues. Now, whether you're using a process management platform like AirManual or simply keeping it in Google Docs, the point is to have one place where your team can self-serve for answers rather than having to rely on their manager to explain things every time. By centralizing your processes, ideally across the whole organization, allows everyone to work independently and help them reduce the number of unnecessary meetings, interruptions, questions, mistakes, and so on. Now, even when you have great systems in place, it's common to see teams still get derailed by distractions. Maybe it's reactive tasks that come in at the last minute, or perhaps they're unclear on priorities, or maybe there's just urgent stuff that keeps coming up. So how do you train your team to stay focused and avoid the derailments, both derailing them, but also derailing other team members, even team members in other teams or their manager? Well, my recommendation is to set clear expectations around focus time. Encourage your team to block off certain times of the day to work without interruptions. For example, my customer success and support team, they have particular times where they go and check customer support and handle the emails and messages that they've received, rather than every time they see a little notification, oh, I'll just jump and handle support, which is really inefficient and will constantly pull them away from focused activity. So you want them focusing on doing the particular priority that they're working on, with time allocated to then take their head out of their work and go and have a look at whether it's support or whether it's then checking Slack or Teams or emails or whatever, to then see, okay, what else do I need to do? You can also train them on how to handle small problems on their own. And in fact, in our teams, we even give them guidance on examples of sorts of problems, like, what happens if a customer raises a bug in our software? Should that immediately just be thrown over to the development team, and you've got software developers who are working on exciting brand new features that are top priorities, and suddenly there's this bug, and should they now jump onto that and start diagnosing it and fixing it? What if it's only affects one customer and actually there's an easy workaround? You don't want those derails affecting all the team all the time. So as a result, we provide guidance to our teams on what the sorts of issues that tend to come in, like the occasional bug or a tech support question or whatever, and how to deal with that. What diagnosis activities they should be doing themselves, perhaps in customer support. How to prioritize those, and when to genuinely raise it to the development team as a urgent red flag, red alarm, or indeed even as an incident. For example, if there's a data security issue or if the site goes down or whatever, we have an incident response process that we can follow. But most things aren't that urgent. Most things can be captured as an issue and picked up at another point. And so by giving our team guidance on how to do that, it removes those distractions, those derailments, and so on. But it's important to realize that when it comes to those distractions, ultimately it starts with the manager. If the managers are getting pulled into every little issue, their teams will do the same. So train your managers to model those focused, productive work habits. Train your managers and coach your managers to address those derailing behaviors in their team, and to do so nice and early. So to wrap up, if you want to set up your team for success and help things run smoothly without those derailments, build structure into the day-to-day work. Give the manager and the teams guidance on how they should be working, both in terms of regular meeting rhythms, like weekly one-to-ones and check-ins, in terms of creating some kind of system for tracking issues so that nothing slips through the cracks, centralizing all your process documentation so that your team can access the information they need without having to interrupt others to ask questions, and finally, train your team to avoid distractions and stay focused on what matters most. When you've got a well-structured team, it becomes a self-sufficient team. It means fewer ad hoc meetings, fewer emergencies, and a lot more productivity. Now, if you want access to templates or tools to help with process documentation, team management, guidance on how to address those derails, feel free to reach out to me, alexis.kingsbury@airmanual.co. We've got loads of resources and process templates and so on to help you set up your team for success. Otherwise, thanks so much for listening. If you found this episode useful, please do subscribe. And if you're listening on a podcast platform such as Apple or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. Each one makes a huge difference. But otherwise, until next time, have fun.